Hey guys, I'm Mike Rivers with the Rivers Group over at Compass Real Estate. I am a Boston area native and a local real estate advisor. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at Boston's Jamaica Plain neighborhood and the pros and cons of living there. So whether you're considering moving to the area or you're just a little bit curious about this neighborhood itself, this video should give you some great insight about one of the most unique neighborhoods in the city. And if you think you might need some help navigating, buying, selling, renting, investing anywhere at all in the city of Boston, please don't hesitate to reach out. I grew up just 10 minutes from here. I have lived and worked all around the city of Boston for the last 20 years, and I absolutely love being a resource for people who are either moving around within the area or they're coming in from out of state. Please don't hesitate to give me a shout and let me know what it is you need, and I'm happy to help. In the meantime, let's dive into the Jamaica Plain neighborhood, starting with a quick overview of its location in the city. JP is located just west of the major metro areas of Boston, and it borders Mission Hill, Roxbury, West Roxbury, Roslindale, and Mattapan, and also the town of Brookline. Jamaica Plain is a very popular area in Boston, and a lot of it has kind of a suburban feel versus some of the surrounding areas. It has a lot of great characteristics and a few drawbacks as well. One of those drawbacks is one of the primary reasons I actually left Jamaica Plain after living there for 5 years, so stick around for that. But first, let's dive into the positive aspects of JP, taking a look at the pros. Pro number one of JP is the diverse community. And with a name like Jamaica Plain, you might assume that this is an entirely Rastafarian neighborhood. And that would be a fair guess, but the origin of the name itself hasn't really been nailed down, and the theories kind of vary from the early residents' appreciation of Jamaican rum to the anglicized name of one of the native tribal leaders of the area. But wherever the name came from, this is one of the most incredibly diverse melting pots of cultures and backgrounds in the city of Boston. And it basically creates this welcoming and inclusive atmosphere. It's definitely a neighborhood that embraces diversity, and you may find that it even has a generally warmer feel than some of the other neighborhoods in Boston. And the diversity here definitely impacts the food scene, which I'll get into in just a few minutes. Pro number two of living in Jamaica Plain is the access you have to the open green spaces and parks. You may have already heard of Boston's Emerald Necklace, which I'm hoping to cover in its entirety in another video, but it's basically a serpentine chain of parks that stretches from downtown Boston to the southwestern neighborhoods of the city. And a few large parks within that chain can actually be found right here in Jamaica Plain. Olmsted Park runs along Brookline at JP's northwestern edge. The park was named after the designer Frederick Law Olmsted, who is well known for designing New York Central Park as well as the vast majority of today's Emerald Necklace, among countless other parks and campuses around the country. Olmsted Park features walking and bike paths, a few small ponds, and athletic fields, and that's going to lead you to Jamaica Pond, which is a couple of blocks away from where I lived for 5 years. This is an incredible part of the city. The pond is the perfect place for walking and running. It has some stationary workout equipment built into the small nooks along the walking paths. They stock the pond with fish every year, and there are always people fishing here when it's warm out. The Jamaica Pond Boathouse allows people to take out rowboats, sailboats, kayaks, and paddleboards during the summer for a very reasonable price. And on mild summer days, residents inside and outside of JP come here to hang out. And there's also regular events happening here. And then you have the Arnold Arboretum, which is immaculately maintained by Harvard University. If you are a plant person, I'm probably going to undersell this place, but it is enormous. It's definitely one of the largest parks in the city, and I'm not even sure you can call it a park because it's more like a museum of trees and plants from all over the Northeast. And since I'm talking about open spaces, I'm also going to mention the Forest Hills Cemetery, which is not a place that I would go to hang out if I didn't have a relative buried there, but I do have a friend that absolutely raves about this place, and as far as cemeteries go, it's definitely a beautiful place to be. But hey, leave a comment. Let me know if hanging out at cemeteries is something that people do. Maybe I'm just behind the times. Finally, I do want to mention another park that's not technically in JP, but it's right next door in neighboring Roxbury, and that is Boston's largest open space. Franklin Park is almost 500 acres of park, and it has tons of walking paths, ponds, baseball fields, tennis courts, a football stadium, an 18-hole golf course, and even a zoo. That's right, there is a zoo in this park. And regardless of how you feel about caged animals, this park has something for everyone, and it's a great place to wrap up the many great parks around the Jamaica Plain area. Pro number three is the public transportation access. And there are plenty of buses running around the Jamaica Plain area, but if you're going to be heading downtown, your best bet is going to be to jump on the Orange Line train. Now, I took this for years. I lived right here, and it took me less than 15 minutes to walk to this stop right here, so you can kind of use that as a gauge. But since the subway line runs through almost the middle of town, it's pretty accessible for most of the residents here. And I've been taking these train lines forever, and when I lived in Jamaica Plain and was commuting to the Back Bay, I think I was typically on the train for about 10 minutes each way. I was getting on at the second to last stop on this side of the city, so 10 minutes from stepping on the train to a block away from my office in the Back Bay at the time was great. Now that said, Boston Subway is the oldest operating subway in the country. There are definitely some occasional repairs being done, and sometimes they have to supplement the normal train routes with bus routes. And if there are track repairs being done, trains may have to run below normal speeds for a while until the tracks settle correctly. So it's not super uncommon to see maintenance being done on the MBTA, but no train line is immune to this. And it's just something that Boston residents know they have to put up with sometimes, and the Orange Line train is no exception. Pro number 4 is the arts and culture scene. Jamaica Plain is a very artsy neighborhood, so if that is your vibe, this might be the perfect place for you to live. There are a ton of artists, musicians, creatives, galleries, theaters, street art. There are organized walking tours for checking out the local studios and talking to local artists. Check out the website of the Jamaica Plain Artists Association and the Jamaica Plain Open Studios. There are always exhibits and workshops happening in this area. You have places like the U Forge Gallery in the Jamaica Plain branch of the Boston Public Library. And then there's the Elliott School of Fine and Applied Arts, which is a great place for workshops. Just walking around this neighborhood, you're going to see a lot of murals, a lot of street art, even a lot of the local businesses supporting those local artists by either hanging artwork in the businesses themselves or allowing them to create murals on the walls within those businesses. So definitely a lot of support and promotion of local artists. And there's also several performing arts venues, including the Footlight Club, which is one of the oldest community theaters in the country. Throughout the year, Jamaica Plain hosts a variety of cultural festivals and events that celebrate the neighborhood's heritage and diversity, from the Wake Up Earth Festival celebrating community activism and environmentalism to the Jamaica Plain Music Festival, which showcases some local musicians across all genres. These events are happening all the time in JP, and then you have some artisan markets and craft fairs, so if you're a fan of handmade goods, you're going to be right at home here. So if you are an art lover, this might be the absolute perfect neighborhood for you. Pro number 5 is the eclectic dining scene here. And you may not find it surprising that a creative, artsy, and diverse neighborhood is also home to one of the best and most eclectic restaurant scenes in town. There are not many chains in this neighborhood, which is great, and if anything, some of the places I mentioned will have a couple of other locations in Boston. Now, obviously, there's a Dunkin' Donuts here because by law you have to have at least 300 in every neighborhood of Boston. And as a side note, the Dunkin' Donuts here on Center Street was consistently one of the worst run dunks I have ever stepped foot in, but I guess terrible service is what I get for not supporting the local independent coffee shops. And JP is also home to the original JP Licks, an ice cream shop that now has 17 locations in the greater Boston area. Okay, so moving past donuts and ice cream, you can actually find a lot of these great food joints right on Center Street, which is basically JP's main street running through the middle of town. And the food here is generally excellent. So kicking it off with the cafes, bakeries, and breakfasts, you have Espresso Yourself, Third Cliff Bakery, Ula Cafe, Mike and Patty's, J Pizzle Kitchen, which is part American diner, part Colombian cuisine, and I used to get breakfast here almost daily when I lived in the neighborhood. And then for restaurants, you have Soup Shack for ramen. And guys, if it is a cold or rainy day out and I want some soup, I will still drive 20 minutes both ways to get to Soup Shack because they, I swear to God, sprinkle like crack into the duck noodle soup here. It is absolutely off the charts. Definitely try that out, even if you're just in the neighborhood for a weekend. It is incredible. And beyond that, you're going to have Vivi and 10 Tables, which are both phenomenal American restaurants with a rotating seasonal menu, Tres Gatos for Spanish tapas, The Haven for Scottish food, Chilicates for Mexican street food, Blue Nile for Ethiopian. Tonino is a newer addition, but apparently serving up some fantastic Italian food. And then there's Brassica Kitchen, which is one of the few other restaurants here that I actually haven't been to yet, but they are taking some unique approaches to traditional plates, and that's probably at the top of my hit list next time I eat in this neighborhood. So overall, there are a ton of great options for all appetites and budgets here, and this is definitely one of the best places in Boston to live if you are a foodie. Pro number 6 of living in JP is the strong sense of community they have here. And JP feels like a tight-knit suburb for a number of different reasons. It's definitely a proud, earthy, crunchy, and artsy neighborhood. There are a bunch of local independent businesses heavily supported by the community, which definitely adds a collective sense of pride to the neighborhood. There are boutiques, funky music shops, thrift stores, small grocers, and markets. There are tons of artists and musicians here. I already mentioned the access to parks and green spaces. I think people just drawn to those outdoor spaces and spending a lot of time out in nature are generally happier people, especially as far as Bostonians go. There are a ton of community events here. Thursdays on the Lawn is basically a weekly block party in the summer hosted by the Loring Greeno House. There are food trucks, a beer garden, musicians, activities for kids. Tons of people from the neighborhood show up to meet and hang out with their neighbors here. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to community events and celebrations here in JP, but the vibe here is very cool. If I was an outdoorsy, earthy, crunchy person moving to Boston for the first time and wanted to meet some people organically, this is definitely where I would live. This isn't one of those post-graduate party neighborhoods where you live for a few years before you settle down and move to the suburbs. This is a neighborhood where it's more common to actually settle in for a longer period of time, whether you are starting a family or not. But I think the community really does draw people to this neighborhood, and I think it actually makes it really difficult to leave this neighborhood as well. Pro number 7 of living in JP is the diverse architecture and housing options you have here. And this is the last pro I'll talk about before I get into the drawbacks and my reason for leaving Jamaica Plain. But JP features all kinds of architecture as it's grown as a residential community over the last several centuries. So let's get into some of the architecture you're going to see here, and generally what you can expect and where you can expect to find these homes. So you're going to have plenty of these colonial era houses here that date back to the early days of the city, and these are kind of all over the neighborhood. And during the 19th century, JP experienced quite a bit of growth, and many wealthy families built these elaborate Victorian mansions in the area. Now these are those homes with ornate detailing, intricate woodwork, decorative trim, and elaborate porches. And many of those homes can be found throughout the neighborhood, but especially over by Jamaica Pond and those surrounding areas. And then you have these classic Boston ever-present double and triple decker homes, some of which have been divided and condoed and sold off as individual units. Some are still owned by one family and completely rented out to other people. Some are still old school where the family owns the building, lives in one unit, and rents out the other unit or units to help out with those mortgage payments. Now, as immigrants poured into Boston in the 19th and 20th centuries, these buildings became extremely common to accommodate the growing population, and they are found in virtually all of the neighborhoods outside of Boston's major downtown areas. You are generally going to find more of these buildings along the more urban feeling eastern side of this neighborhood, along Roxbury and Franklin Park. And you're also going to see some craftsman style bungalows, and those are going to be a little bit more common as you head towards the pond as well. And then you have some modernist architecture in some of the institutional and commercial buildings, and then several adaptive reuse and conversion projects like the Haffenreffer Brewery, which has been transformed into a mixed-use development with residential lofts, office space, and retail. And finally, in a lot of these residential neighborhoods on the outer edges of Boston's metro areas, there are a bunch of multi-unit condo complexes going up, especially by the major transit stops and town centers. So definitely investor capital rolling into not just Jamaica Plain, but other neighborhoods in Boston as well. Now I want to take another look at this map of Jamaica Plain because I really want to show you exactly where you can kind of find these different types of housing. Now over along the eastern edge of Jamaica Plain towards Franklin Park and Roxbury, you're definitely going to have more frequent 2-family, 3-family homes, these double-decker and triple-decker homes. They're a little bit spaced right on top of each other. There's not a ton of yard space. They're more densely populated, not a lot of parking options in those areas. And that's again towards the eastern side of Jamaica Plain towards Roxbury, as well as on the northern edge. And those are the more kind of city side of JP. They're closer to Boston's metro areas. And as you get a little bit further away from those areas towards Jamaica Pond, you're going to see a lot more space. There's a lot less density. The streets feel a little bit more suburban. There's a lot more single family homes in these areas and just a little bit more space to breathe. And again, you're going to find those Victorian homes, those colonial era single family homes, as well as those craftsman style bungalows in this neck of the woods. And then you can even see even further west in JP, these areas start feeling a lot more suburban. So they look completely different than those streets that have those 2- and 3-family double and triple deckers on them. And there's just a interesting mix of the different types of housing in this neighborhood. And as well as on these main corridors, as I mentioned, these condo complexes have started going up around the train lines. So as you can see, these multi-unit complexes going up, and those are going to be a lot more common around the train stops and along the major intersections and some of the smaller town centers. So there you have it for the housing in Jamaica Plain. Definitely a lot to choose from. Now let's take a look at a few of the drawbacks of living in Jamaica Plain, and one of these is one of the primary reasons that I actually had to move out of the area. So drawback number 1 of living in Jamaica Plain is the limited highway access you have here. Now obviously this isn't going to be a huge concern for everyone, but if you're in the car often, if you have to get to areas outside of Boston regularly, this location can be absolutely miserable. Now, I actually lived in Jamaica Plain because I was basically in a personal situation that allowed me to pay a relatively low cost to live here. And I did that for 5 years. I was able to take advantage of that situation. But one of my primary reasons for actually moving out of the neighborhood was because it was so brutal for me to actually get around with my car. As a real estate agent with a growing business, I had to constantly be not just in the city of Boston, but also in the South Shore, where a lot of my network is, a lot of my friends and family, a lot of the people that we're helping out with real estate transactions. So getting to the expressway, getting to I-93 from where I lived in Jamaica Plain was an absolute nightmare. Sometimes it would take me just to get to the highway 30 minutes or so, and there's probably 15 or 20 traffic lights along that route. And then getting to I-95 on the other side can be just as challenging. So if you are in the car often, just bear that in mind. This area can be absolutely miserable if you have to get to the expressway. And if you're familiar with this area at all, you know the expressways themselves can be an absolute nightmare. So adding 30 minutes onto that commute for me just wasn't hacking it. And it's the reason a lot of people don't move to this neighborhood if they are in the car often. Drawback number 2 of living in Jamaica Plain is the cost of living. Now, this is another desirable neighborhood in Boston, but it's by no means the most expensive. It's not going to top neighborhoods like Back Bay, Beacon Hill, the Seaport, Fenway, Kenmore, the West End, the North End, the South End. Those are all going to be a little bit pricier than Jamaica Plain. That said, Jamaica Plain's not going to be the cheapest option either. And if you want to know what the cost of living is for those neighborhoods, definitely check out the pros and cons videos that I have done in those neighborhoods as well. But I always go over what the median sales prices are for condos and what the rental rates are in each of these neighborhoods. And because this video has a little bit more of a suburban feel, there's more single family homes in this neighborhood, so I'm going to include those numbers as well. So let's take a look at the median sales prices over the last 12 months for Jamaica Plain. So we're going to start off with the median sales prices for condos. And starting with the studios, there were not very many of these that I found, and the ones that I did find were in newer complexes or they were in converted lofts, so at the higher end of the price point. And those studios were going for $440,000. The one-bedroom condos going for $420,000, two-bedroom condos going for $654,000, and three-bedroom condos going for $891,000. Now, the single-family homes, the two bedrooms, which there are not many of, were going for $947,000, three bedrooms going for $950,000, and four bedrooms going for $1.3 million. And those are for the single-family homes in Jamaica Plain. Now, the apartment rental rates for studios are going to be $2,750 a month, one bedrooms going for $2,600 a month, two bedrooms going for $3,000 a month, and three bedrooms going for $3,600 a month. And again, guys, those are just the median rates. They vary depending on location, amenities, what the finishes are like. If you want to get your hands on something in this neighborhood, whether it's a rental or whether it's a home, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to start that conversation and get you into a home in Jamaica Plain. Drawback number 3 is the parking challenges here. Now, as is the case in many of these Boston neighborhoods, finding parking in Jamaica Plain can be tough, especially in those densely populated areas. Now, where I lived over by the pond, my street actually didn't even require a permit for on-street parking, and I never had a problem finding a spot on the street there either. There are also more driveways and off-street parking spots available for homes and apartments in those less dense, more suburban areas. But in neighborhoods with all of those double-deckers, triple-deckers, you are not likely to find a spot on the street very easily. So if you are looking for homes and apartments in this area, feel free to reach out to me if parking is a must-have for you. Drawback number 4 is the driving and traffic challenges. Traffic around this neighborhood can be absolutely brutal. Center Street basically is an access road that runs through the middle of JP from Columbus Ave, which connects to the main downtown areas. Since it's one of the main roads and it also runs through the center of town and to many of the shops and retailers, there is very rarely not traffic here. And since this is more of a laid-back, bike-friendly, earthy, crunchy town with a lot of pedestrians who are not in as much of a hurry to get places, which, hey, isn't a bad thing, but that's 100% going to factor into the slow-moving traffic in this neighborhood. And one of the other main thoroughfares is the Jamaica Way. This is a winding parkway with 2 narrow lanes on each side of the road. At rush hour, this is bumper-to-bumper gridlock traffic, and outside of rush hour, this is one of the most dangerous roads in the city, with fast-moving cars in close proximity passing through rotaries that seem to be designed to cause accidents. Driving this road is about as close as you can possibly get to real-life Mario Kart, and is going to be another drawback for people that are driving often in this neighborhood. Drawback number 5 is the gentrification concerns. Now, this might not be a drawback for you. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. But like many urban neighborhoods, gentrification can lead to increased property values, but can also lead to the displacement of long-term residents. There is more development happening here, and property values are only going up for those homeowner residents. But this does impact rental rates as well. So there is a concern for many JP locals, but with the demand for new homes around Boston and the fact that some of this development does allow great new residents to join these communities and help support and create more small businesses, is this really all a bad thing? Definitely let me know what your take is in the comments below. And that wraps up the drawbacks of the Jamaica Plain neighborhood. So to wrap up here, guys, Jamaica Plain is a fantastic place to live, but it might not be for everyone. It definitely offers a culturally rich, diverse neighborhood with a great art scene and great restaurants, but it does come with a couple of drawbacks, especially the cost of living and challenges for those of you that are tied to your cars a little bit more. And I want to thank you guys for watching this video. I can't tell you how much it means to see people spending this much time listening to me talk. And if this was even remotely helpful for you, please give me a like so I know I'm providing some value here. And again, I'm trying to make these videos as valuable as I can in a short period of time. So if there's anything else you were curious about, feel free to leave a comment. I'm always trying to improve these videos. So if there's any way that I could have done that, I'm happy to hear what you have to say in the comments below. And with that said, if you are planning on making a move to the Boston area or you're curious about some of the other neighborhoods, let me know. Give me a text or a call at the number below. I'm happy to be your boots on the ground here and guide you through these many great neighborhoods of Boston. And again, guys, thank you so much for watching. See you on the next one. Please subscribe for more great Boston real estate content and take care.